In June of 2021, the Department of Interior ordered an investigation of federal Indian border schools, which operated from 1813 to 1969. This is part of the letter to the director from Brian Newland, Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, upon completion of the first part of their report that was just released. Quote, this report shows for the first time that between 1819 and 1969, the United States operated or supported 408 boarding schools across 37 states or then territories, including 21 schools in Alaska and 7 schools in Hawaii. This report identifies each of those schools by name and location, some of which operated multiple sites. This report confirms that the United States directly targeted American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian children in pursuit of a policy of cultural assimilation that coincided with the Indian territorial dispossession. It identifies the federal Indian boarding schools that were used as a means for these ends, along with at least 53 burial sites for children across this system, with more site discoveries and data expected as we continue our research. This report highlights some of the conditions these children endured at these schools and raises important questions about the short-term and long-term consequences of the federal Indian boarding school system on Indian tribes, Alaskan natives, and Native Hawaiian community. I am recommending further investigation to examine those consequences. Unquote. Again, that was from the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, Brian Newland. Now, here's part of the actual report. Quote, the federal Indian boarding school system predominantly included manual labor of American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian children as part of the school's curriculum, including but not limited to the following: livestock and poultry raising, dairying, Western agriculture production, fertilizing, lumbering, brick making, cooking, garment making, irrigation system development, and working on the railroad system. The federal Indian boarding school system focused on manual labor and vocational skills that left American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian graduates with employment options often irrelevant to the industrial U.S. economy, further disrupting tribal economies. Federal Indian boarding school rules were often enforced through punishment, including corporal punishment such as solitary confinement, flogging, withholding food, whipping, slapping, and cuffing. The federal Indian boarding school system at times made other older Indian children punish younger Indian children. Of the 408 Indian boarding schools, approximately 90 schools might still operate as educational facilities. However, not all 90 institutions still board children or are federally supported. The department's investigation has already identified marked or unmarked burial sites at approximately 53 different schools across the federal Indian boarding school system. As the investigation continues, the department expects the number of identified burial sites to increase. The composition of the approximate numbers of identified burial sites is as follows: marked burial sites 33, unmarked 6, both unmarked and unmarked burial sites at present school locations 14. The department will not make public the specific location of burial sites associated with the federal Indian boarding school system in order to protect against well-documented grave robbing, vandalism, and other disturbances to Indian burial sites. Based on the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative investigation's initial analysis, approximately 19 federal Indian boarding schools accounted for over 500 American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian child deaths. As the investigation continues, the department expects the number of recorded deaths to increase. That was part of the initial report on federal Indian boarding schools. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.